And then we got the teams to analyze the data, and it was interesting that in black color, people who are buying black are always buying short sleeves for girls, yeah.
Okay.
But when it comes to pink, you have a different mix between short sleeves and full sleeves.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was period on period, period on period, and you're like, okay, there's something definitely behind the scenes, because it's not a coincidence that in black it is short sleeves, but it in pink, the mix of short and long sleeves is very different in
Very
black and pink. So, and then you cannot just make it like, if you are just looking at, if you're
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Retail Reloaded by Loyalytics AI, where we dive into the world of retail and what's happening there. Today, it's a special one. We are joined by amazing guests Niraj and Ahmar. Niraj Jain, who is the CEO of Multi-trend Indo, working with multiple brands like Yum brands, Matahari, and have traversed multiple retail transformation in the space. And we also have Ahmar with us, CEO and co-founder of Loyalytics AI, where he has been part of multiple brands, again, helping them use the data, customer data, to drive transformation, change across loyalty and customer engagement, right? So thank you again. Welcome to this episode of Retail Reloaded. We hope to have an interesting conversation today, where we will dive into the world of fashion retail, what's happening in Indonesia, the challenges, and as well as the implications of tech. And of course, everyone is talking about AI. So what's the impact of AI in fashion retail as well, right?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miran. Good to be back. This is my second time. And Niraj, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor and a privilege to have you, and really looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
And
great,
look forward
great.
to the conversation.
Sure. So before we start and go into fashion and details of how it works, the challenges and all the other things, of course it starts with the people that is driving the change, like you, Neeraj, and from a fashion retail perspective, and Amber from a tech perspective, right? So we'd like to start the journey. We would like to understand how did you come up here, right? Where you are right now. What has been your transformation journey? Starting with Neeraj, you have started from TVS Motors to Yum brands to Matahari and now Multi-trend Indo, which is Kanmo Group. Walk us through what has been the journey from the start, to here.
Yeah, kind of. When I look back, yes, it has been a diverse journey, but I think that's also been my asset. Kind of, when I think about it and when I look at it. So started with TVS Motors, which was more of a very organized automobile company. They had partnership with Suzuki from Japan. So very structured, organized automobile industry, which works by processes and systems, and learned a lot in the process. Joined Dulux Paints, ICI, which was more on strategic projects. That was my first introduction to Indonesia, because I was based in Malaysia, taking care of a regional role. Moving into Yum brands then was very different, which is a fast-paced QSR growth market.
Yeah.
And kind of moving from more of a FMCG automobile to a QSR consumer-facing. And then Kanmo happened, so I joined them in 2013, which was when it was more of a startup. And the interesting thing was working from large organizations going into a family-owned organization, which is small, but you get to take care of everything.
Yeah.
And I think that did help me a lot in terms of personally learning beyond finance, getting more closer to consumer. And then I went to Matahari for a 5-6 year stint, looking at a department store business, very similar to retail, but a little different consumer segment and distribution channel. And now when I look back, getting back into multi-trend, which is a lot more consumer driven. I think while one way to say is that we sell products, but when I look at it, we sell customer experience.
Yeah,
and that's why a customer comes to our store. So various different experience, but I think that has been an asset, and that has enabled me to think beyond numbers, to get a connectivity between numbers and business. So happy with the journey so far.
Yeah, and Niraj, fashion is, of course, it's creative. It's all about emotions, as you said. How do you drive customer experience, right? And you come from a very heavy finance background, right? So how does this transition from a finance to a more creative space, specifically Indonesia, considering it's a heart of fashion retail, right? How did this transition happen? What was the motivation behind it?
So my background, like my education and everything, kind of did help me in terms of understanding the numbers, and that's a strength, right? But when you look at being in the creative industry or fashion retail, is a lot to do with also numbers as to what's happening inside the business, who is your consumer, what are they liking, what are they not liking, trying to have a switch between art and science. I would say that's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
combination of arts and sciences fashion. While the product side is a lot more art, but how much of that product to get in is also a science, and it's also a mathematics that you have to get into.
Right.
So for me, it was kind of, again, as a startup, you learned into it, and then you build on the biggest talent that you have, which is people in the organization. At the same time, continue to use your strength and work on your opportunities, and then that's how you kind of you build that know-how. And I personally feel that yes, I'm getting it now, and there is still a lot for me to learn.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. I would love to understand more on how you're driving change in Kanmo since you're part of it right now, right? But before that, quick similar journey. We'd want to know about you, Ahmar, since you have been leading analytics for some of the global organizations like HP and Target, and then you started with Loyalytics AI, right? So what was the vision, right? What was the motivation again behind starting Loyalytics AI after working with such retail giants across the globe?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Miran. And thank you, Niraj, for an amazing, introduction and the context. So, Loyalytics, as I think I would have said before as well, we are almost a decade old now. We started in 2015, 10 years back, and the three co-founders at Loyalytics, Miran, as you know, all three of us have very similar background. So I, for example, as you rightly said, was with HP. I spent close to 7 years with Hewlett Packard. Post that, I joined Target Corporation, the retailer in the US. I was with them for another 2 years. But the entire background, I think, similar to Neeraj, was also very numbers driven, right? Because I started my career with analytics, data analytics. Of course, back then, AI was not the buzzword, and nobody was talking about AI. But we joke around that we were building machine learning models way back in 2009, when it was not cool to be doing all this stuff, right? So that's how I started my career, and analytics, of course, was always the first love. So as I say, very passionate about numbers, data, how businesses can be truly transformed using intelligence, using data, was something that I was very, very interested in, and I was very fortunate to be able to be a part of such transformations. So particularly with Target, which was an amazing stint, and it was in Target actually. When Mohit and Imran, my other two co-founders, we were all three together in Target, and that is where the this whole seed of Loyalytics kind of got sowed, right? So, what was the idea? To be honest, there was no earth-shattering idea as such. But what we did feel, back then, and probably I would say would stand true even now, is the fact that we saw that there was a lot of gap between some of the best retailers in the world, the likes of Target, Tesco, Walmart, Kroger, and through our previous experiences, we had exposure to how these companies function, how they were using data, and all of that. But then there were also a lot many other retailers who were probably not at the same stage, right? At the same evolution of being able to leverage data, right? And that is where we sensed an opportunity, as simple as that, right? We felt that there is a big opportunity in Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East, right? Where there are big retail giants, but in terms of their ability to be able to leverage data, they would need some help, right? And that is where Loyalytics was started, with the very simple, as I said, belief that analytics and data can truly transform businesses, and particularly retail business, because I've always said that, and I'm sure everybody would agree that it's a very it's a very data intensive business, right? I mean, every day you create hundreds and thousands of transactions, right, in your stores, in e-commerce. So there's a lot of scope. So that was how, honestly, Loyalytics started. It's been a great journey. um, 10 years, of course, is a long time. When I look back, full of ups and downs, for great learnings. But I think the best part always is, and I think Niraj also alluded to it, is this diverse experience of working with different companies, and being a part of their journey. I think teaches you a lot. So I think that's the best part of the job. I'm loving it, and I hope to continue, to be doing it
Definitely,
many more
definitely.
years.
Yeah, hopefully many more years. So very very interesting, versatile experience, both of you, Neeraj and Amar. And then when we talk about retail, right, and specifically since the discussion today is about fashion retail, right? Even before we go into what makes or breaks a fashion retail, I want to understand how the fashion retail landscape is currently, right, across the globe. And since we are talking about Indonesia, specifically Southeast Asia and Indonesia, so how does the retail trend look like? And Neeraj, since you have been here, I don't know,
More than a decade.
more than a decade. So what does it look like? What is your experience so far?
So if you look at it, as you rightly mentioned, retail is it's evolving. Like it's evolving and evolving very very fast. There are definitely certain pieces which were working. There was change happening before COVID, if I put
Yeah.
it up that way,
Yeah.
but it was having at a slow pace, and I think the entire COVID experience changed the pace of it. So to give you a reference, I would say it will be adoption of e-commerce. Before COVID, we are seeing that okay, people have started to order online, and there was only a certain amount of younger customers who are getting into it.
Right.
But during COVID, everybody got used to or were forced to use e-commerce, and then they found the convenience of using e-commerce. So adoption of e-commerce has changed a lot. The other retail landscape change would be, like say specifically for Indonesia, is the loyalty and trust towards. There's a feeling of nationalism that has come in, and we have seen a growth of lot of local brands. That's happening in the market. People are willing to try new products more often now than in the past. So people are more exploratory. So yeah, there are changes in consumer behavior. In terms of product mix, we are seeing people are buying more active. I think there's a change in lifestyle.
Yeah.
People have gone more casual versus more formal. In the past, if I was going to a board meeting, I should definitely wear a, like you should be wearing a blazer, tie, everything.
yeah.
But now I think
People
it's okay. It's okay for you to go in a t-shirt. So there is a change in what consumer buy, how consumer buy, where they buy, and whether it is local, global. So there is a change in all aspects of it.
Right, right. And Amar, since you will also be able to drive some contrast working with retailers in the US as well as in the Middle East, right? What difference do you see in these regions from a fashion perspective? And when you come to Indonesia or Southeast Asia, what has been your experience so far?
So I think I'll just like to, take on from what Neeraj said, in terms of what changes have happened. Right, he's very right. Fashion, of course, is a continuously evolving industry. Probably, I would say the most evolving within retail. Right, because you see, I mean, if you think about, of course, changes have happened across, but grocery retail still kind of, would kind of. Uh, Consume, or people would consume similar kind of products, fresh and all of that. Fashion is where I think a lot of change has happened, definitely, and more so, of course, in terms of channels that Neeraj alluded to. So TikTok, for example, right? I mean, that's huge. What I've come to realize, and which was, of course, news to me, is it's a huge channel, commerce channel here in Southeast Asia. But if you look at Middle East, right, and since you asked me to kind of compare, it's not really that there, right? I mean, it's not as big or as prominent commerce channel back home in Middle East, right? But here in Indonesia, definitely, and I'm sure other Southeast Asian countries, it's huge. Live commerce is another trend which is
Very
picking
big.
up, right? Which you don't see probably any of it again in Middle East, right?
Right.
So that ways, Southeast Asia is definitely different, and I would say in terms of also technology and adoption of technology, consumers here are probably, I would say, ahead in terms of using all of these channels. And again, if you're the CEO of a fashion business, it is how do I say it? I mean, you'll have to be on your feet all the time, right? Because newer channels are emerging. How do you make sure that you have a presence there? How do you make sure that you engage customers in the right way, right? When you don't only have to think about your stores now. You have to think about your e-commerce. You have to think about TikTok. You have to think about so many other things, right? So I think yes, definitely there are differences, and but again, having said that, and I'm sure we will talk about this. I think the fundamentals of customer engagement and the fundamentals of pure retail, fashion retail business, of course, remains the same,
Right.
right? And that's the beauty about it, right? That of course, things will change in and around, but the fundamentals always remain the same, and that is where I think businesses who kind of focus on the fundamentals are the ones that do well in the long run, right? So I think yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Niraj, since you mentioned COVID, right, and from my experience working with retailers in this region, of course, now the consumer behavior has largely changed after COVID, right? And one thing that you mentioned, people were forced to go into online or e-commerce or live commerce per se, right? But how does the consumer behavior now that things are back to normal, right? How it was before COVID, but there has been a major shift in the consumer behavior, right? Because e-commerce has penetrated, in depth, right? So how are things changing there?
So from a consumer perspective, if you look at it, kind of, it's a change in lifestyle for the consumer, right? It's the way they consume social media has also changed. There was a time when social media was used only for content, but now with TikTok, as you were rightly referring to, TikTok is not only a channel for consuming reels or
Correct.
content. It's also a channel where consumers are shopping, and they are shopping huge on TikTok. And with Omni-Channel, that what has happened is consumer has the convenience of shopping anytime, anywhere. A customer now expects that okay, they should be able to go to a store, use it kind of a showroom, look at the product, go home and shop at the convenience at night, or research online before buying anything. And it works both ways. It's not only that consumers are coming to a store and buying
Buying
online.
online.
It's also the other way around, wherein somebody is researching the product online, and then they are going into the store and having a look and feel at the product and buying it. So it works both ways. So consumer has changed, but the core, as Ahmar was rightly talking about, is consumer remains at the center of everything. So that is constant,
Yeah.
but the businesses have started to change around how do we serve them better.
Yeah, yeah. True, true. And definitely, and what I have also seen from working here in Indonesia, Indonesia is complex, right? It has massive opportunity. It has a lot of potential, but it is complex. A lot of the e-commerce giants, let's say Amazon, has not been able to penetrate this market. There are local companies like Gojek, Grab, and Bleebly, Shopee, and so many more, right? So, what do you think? What is the regional complexity here? Why Indonesia is different from rest of the parts of the world?
So I remember we were talking about it earlier, and I was like, I don't know, in a analyst call for one of the listed entities, and the audience on the other side, they were like, they have never been to Indonesia, and I was telling them that don't think of Indonesia as a country. You should consider Indonesia as a continent. If you look at it, the width, like we've got 3 time zones in the country, right? It's wide, long, and the consumer behavior is so different. We've got more than 17,000 islands being archipelago.
Yeah.
The preference of the consumer is so different between Jakarta versus, say, Makassar or Aceh. So, like, everything changes. even when we allocate our products, the merchandiser needs to know that, okay, in Aceh, maybe I need to send a lot more conservative clothing. Vis-a-vis, I need to sell a lot of swimming costumes in Bali, for example, right? So there is such a big regional difference, and the difference is not only in terms of religion, but it's also in terms of consumer preference, in terms of climate changes. It's wide, even in terms of economic kind of so GDP per capita is significantly higher in Jakarta or Jabodetabek versus some of the islands. So how do you fit various consumer requirement across?
Yeah, yeah.
Even exposure to global brands. While we may say that they can consume global brands across the market, but there are certain segments which are more closer to global. Nationalism spirit is very different between various markets. So everything is different, and that's where there is definitely a edge that anybody who is local is able to drive. Whereas anybody who is global, they'll need to come and spend a lot of time to learn it.
Yeah.
Right, right. And Amber, since again, Loyalytics is a global company, right? And Loyalytics has been working with multiple global retailers in Middle East, in US. So why Indonesia? Why are you here, right? Considering all of the
Yeah.
different complex
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Oh,
I'll have a very simple answer, Miran, and I don't know, as light it would sound or frivolous it would sound, but we got our first client in Indonesia about 4 years back, 4 or 5 years back. We never had like a full-fledged GTM effort going on here in this region, in this country. Somehow, we kind of an opportunity arose. We were, I think, able to kind of meet their needs and requirements at that point in time, and the engagement started. And that is where the Indonesia journey started for us. Honestly, it was also during COVID times, so travel was not, possible, because of which I was really not able to travel to Indonesia. But once COVID settled down and I made my first trip, in this beautiful country, honestly, I was amazed. And what really caught, I would say, my attention was the people. And therefore, I said that it might sound kind of a bit on the lighter side, that okay, you are wanting to expand into Indonesia because of the people, but people actually make up everything, right? I mean, when you go and talk to leaders here, when you go and talk to people here, just the simplicity, the helpfulness is amazing. I mean, it's a pleasure, honestly, to be doing business in Indonesia. We are still very small, in this country. We are trying to grow, but our experience in the last 3 4 years working with companies here in Indonesia has been amazing. Amazing. It's, as I said again, it's truly a delightful experience talking to our clients here, working with them, helping them solve their problems. It's a delight, and I would want to, hope to continue to kind of, increase our footprint here in the country and beyond Indonesia as well. But yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, that is a very strong reason why we want to, and of course, not discarding the fact that Niraj mentioned earlier, which is it's a huge country, right? I mean, a huge, like a big consumer class, per capita income, again, as Neeraj said, it's a growing economy, right? Um, I was reading somewhere a couple of months back, right? Amidst everything that's happening around the world, there are very few economies which are kind of growing and showing positive trends, Indonesia being one of them. So, every which ways, I mean, if you want to, of course, intellectualize the answer and you look at the market, enough opportunity. But for me, of course, beyond that, it is the people, it is the whole culture, the vibe of the place, right? How the whole experience of doing business here is really good, and that is why we really want to be here and hopefully contribute to the growth of businesses here through data, through analytics, through customer engagement. That is why.
great, great. So, if since we are, yes, of course, a lot of changes are happening lot of things are getting evolved. But again, retail specifically is not doing very well, right? And again, when I speak to retailers, we are not in a good state. The quarter results are the financials are not very great. People are a bit hesitant towards spending any extra penny or extra money towards any additional investments to make changes happen, right?
Yeah.
Transformation within the organization. First, I want to understand what's happening. I mean, from that perspective, why retail is in such a state at current point, and how can organizations, because our audience is mostly retailers, right? Mostly people who are part of the retail world, and this is a question often comes up that, okay, I'm not doing well, but how do I get out of it, right? How can I make things better? So what do you think about it?
So yeah, the fact is, market has been tough, and seated here, I know that every day I wonder, like, what can I do different now to grow and grow faster. So overall macro, especially on the retail side, has been slow, but there are pockets within that that continue to grow.
Yeah.
There are, like, I know we are all, I'm sure if you ask any retailer, how is e-commerce for you doing, they'll all acknowledge that yes, e-commerce is doing great. How's TikTok doing? TikTok is doing fantastic. So there are pockets. I think one of the key piece is how do we get into those journeys? How do we bring consumer at the center of everything we do? Because if we follow the consumer, I'm sure we'll be able to grow it. Right. To me, this is also a period wherein you look back and you look at that, okay, say, how do I make my business lean? How do I make it more productive? And then at the same time, how do I become more customer-centric? So driving productivity through internal processes, systems, use of AI and everything around it, and at the same time, focusing or increasing the focus on what consumer wants and needs,
Right.
and then serving them with what they need and however they need.
Yeah. Okay. So and since we are talking about challenges, right? What does customers prioritize? Is it price? Is it convenience? Is it styles? What sustainability? What are
So
consumers
if I have
prioritize?
to order, right, in terms of Indonesian consumer, Indonesia is a young economy, right? So while customer wants all four of them,
Yeah, I was about to say
right?
that.
Well, customer wants all four of them, but I would say that the first priority of the consumer is still style, fashion, caution.
Yeah.
Like at least in the fashion retail industry, right? They want to look cool. They want to still be able to impress their peers and everybody else. So to me, I think the first thing that will come is fashionability, style. How do the customer feel
yeah.
great in that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
At the same time, to me, the second point would be convenience,
Yeah.
right? Customer want to be able to shop in a store near their place. If they have to travel a lot, and macet is a very common excuse for any meeting in Indonesia. So they want to be able to shop wherever they are, whenever they want, and I can tell you, like, I don't know, with the services like Gojek and everything, customer, even when they're shopping online, even for fashion, at times they expect that, okay, they should be able to get a delivery in an hour or so.
Yeah.
Like there are Instagram stores where people shop in and then the store sends it to your house. So it's convenience. Like, they want to be able to shop anywhere, anytime,
Yeah.
easy. I think pricing would come at the third place, which consumer do care about. And I think it is the price value. It's not pricing in absolute terms, but it's price value that they should feel that, okay, this product is giving me the price value. So it's not that all consumers are looking for the cheapest product, because otherwise in Tokopedia or Shopee, you can easily filter it by price down, and the cheapest price product would have sold the most. But it's not the case. There are consumers who look for price value. And like, for us, when we operate multi-brands, starting from Mother Care to ELC, or say if I look at even on kids fashion, so I know that the consumer for a Mother Care is different from a consumer for Children's Place versus a consumer for Ginger Snaps.
Yeah.
So a Ginger Snaps customer is not necessarily looking for a cheap product. They are looking at a price value. So it's very different when it comes to different brands. Sustainability, I think the more Gen Z and others, so it's something which is growing in the market, but still not the driving factor.
Okay. Okay.
It's not something that the consumer is making their full decisions basis
Based
that.
on yeah.
So it is a piece which is gaining momentum, and I'm fully like, I don't know. I think if a consumer has a choice between same product from a
Yeah.
sustainable versus a non-sustainable,
Yeah.
they'll choose a sustainable.
Correct.
But if the product is only from a non-sustainable, the consumer is not necessarily not having it,
Yeah.
right?
Rejecting it. Yeah.
Not necessarily rejecting it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a journey. I'm very confident that it will grow more and more,
Yeah.
but it's still not the driving factor.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So Amar, since Neeraj mentioned, right, first is of course the style, then the convenience comes into place, and then price, right? So now all of these, we one can be gut driven, styles can still be gut driven. I think that this might work out, right? Convenience, of course, there, as you said, Gojek services, people are shopping Instagram and all of that, and pricing as well, is an interesting part, right? As you said, the value that is driven, right? It's not that you just do a markdown of the product and then it sells faster, right? So how does tech comes in from that perspective, Ahmed? I want to understand.
I mean, of
Here.
course, but can I just answer one, like,
Yeah, yeah.
the earlier part that you brought up, Miran, around the state in which retail is, and as rightly pointed out by Neeraj, I think it's a global phenomena. The world over. It's nothing to do with just Indonesia. And as you said, right, I mean, we deal with retailers in Indonesia, Middle East, right, in back home in India as well. It's a global phenomena, right? Everybody is kind of feeling the heat, right? And every penny is being scrutinized. And boardroom discussions are happening. And now, of course, with the advent of AI and the efficiencies that AI can actually bring in, I'm sure people like Neeraj who are driving big businesses are always asked that, okay, how are we using AI? Where are we using AI? Where are the efficiencies there? So it's a global thing. It's got nothing to do particularly with Indonesia. But I feel that from a service provider perspective, right, which is where, let's say, we would come in, there is a bit of a responsibility that we would also need to have, which is kind of gearing ourselves towards outcomes rather than only selling a product or a platform per se, right? Increasingly, in my conversations with a lot of CEOs and decision makers, the thing that I'm hearing is, your product is great, everything is fine, all okay, all good, but honestly, we care about outcomes, right? Can you do this for me? Right? So can you increase my ATV from A to B, right? Whether you do it through product A, product B, you do it through consulting, whatever, XYZ, does not matter to them, right? They care about outcomes. And I think as service providers, we have to also lean in towards outcome focus, right? Which at Loyalytics, we are, I would say we have already started our journey towards that, right? There are many engagements, which we are doing right now, where we are kind of, signing up on outcomes right from the beginning. We are saying that, okay, work with us, and we will help you achieve A, B, and C, right? Of course, it is always a collaborative effort. You work with the team, but I think that is where service providers will also need to change, because face facts, we are all going through tough times, in the sense that the economy around the world is not really doing good.
Right.
Macroeconomic factors Neeraj already spoke about. There are wars happening all over, so it's not easy, right? Supply chains are getting impacted, fashion retailers particularly. So there are many things that kind of go into it. So yeah, I think, and to your next question, right? I mean, what role technology plays here? I mean, an immense role, right? And technology has actually always played an immense role. I would say at any of these points. You talked about pricing, assortment, sustainability, and I think Neeraj explained it beautifully in terms of what he feels could be the stacking order of what customers would value. Each of these, of course, decisions can be done better, or each of these functions. If you talk about pricing, right? I mean, there's a very deep science behind pricing analytics, pricing optimization, right? How do you really do markdowns, right? Do you wait till the very end? in the season, and then kind of start your markdowns, or do you have some early indicators which can help you to kind of get the timing right for your markdowns? I mean, at the end of the day, as a fashion retailer, all you want to do is to increase your full price sell through, right? For any season, any this thing. How do I make sure that margin erosion is the least, and I'm able to sell majority of my stuff at full price? So definitely, data and analytics play a huge role. If you talk about assortment also, I think a couple of minutes back, Niraj, when we were talking about the complexity and the size of Indonesia, Niraj brought a very valid point around localization of assortment, right? I mean, a store in Bandung or some other area probably would be a bit different from what is selling here in Jakarta, right? So as pan Indonesian retailers, businesses will have to make sure that assortment are customer centric, right? If there is an area where maybe a bit more modest clothing is kind of needed, you do it, you send that there, and then in Jakarta and somewhere else, right? So every decision to that sense, Miran, is driven by data, right? And I'm sure a lot of these retailers are already using it, but yes, there's a lot more that can be done. There's a lot more that where technology can actually play a role in terms of improving the outcomes.
Right.
It's interesting that you mention about trading, and as we call it as trading, that whether you go into promotion middle of the season or wait for end of season sale, and these are actually the questions that we are seated in a management, with the management team in the boardroom, and then we are like, okay, I know that this product is selling all right, but maybe this range, because you cannot go right every time on all range, right? It's a gut feel, that you feel that okay, this will sell, but some clicks, you now know that, oh, I should have bought 3 times of this product, but then there are also product which you feel like, oh, we should not have got, and we always discuss should we do something to start the sell through or push for sell through of this product middle of season, or do we wait till end of season? So interesting, and we always look forward that, okay, what is a better way to manage it, rather than going by an individual's judgment. And if AI and technology can enable it, I'm sure most fashion retailers need that.
Absolutely. So I'd like to go into a bit more detail, right? Specifically on the challenges side. There are many retailers working in Southeast Asia, and again, Indonesia being the hub, specifically Bandung region, there are a lot of fashion retailers out there, big fashion groups in this region, right? So what I would want to understand is what are people getting wrong? Of course, there is a lot of competition, right? As you said, there are legacy brands who have been operating 30, 40 years. There are more new age brands who is talking about fast fashion, more of a trendy kind of a assortment. Then there is also D2C, right, which is not typically how a fashion legacy brand would work like, right? So what do you think most players are getting wrong from, let's say, assortment? Is it assortment? Is it pricing? Is it promotions? Or is it engagement? Where do you think is the crack?
I think it's a combination of everything, and to the core it lies is connection with consumer.
Exactly. Yes.
Are they able to connect with the customer and understand what the customer wants? The more closer we are to the customer, then we know exactly what do they want, so what is the right product.
But how do you do that?
So that's where you need to engage with the customer, understand what is latest trend in the market, be a consumer yourself and try to spend times. What I do is every month I'll ensure that I have a FGD, a focus group discussion, wherein I'm now our customers, right? It's no more a millennial mom. We got a lot of moms who are Gen Z, and when I'm having a focus group discussion with them, their approach is very different from what I would think is like parenting. Parenting to them is very different than what me or my wife were raising our kids, like even 10 years, 15 years back, right? So how do you engage with your customer? How do you read data? Because it's never one customer, right? There are multiple types of customers. How do you get into that details and say, okay, there's a section of this customer who likes things in a particular way. Their preferred shopping mode is this. They like to engage with you more on TikTok, then on Instagram. Like I don't know, it's all science. It's
Yeah,
all numbers
it's
based,
all
right?
numbers, yeah.
How do you split, slice and dice it and understand that okay, this is what it is, this is the size of price, and that's how you decide your method, right?
Yeah.
So that's on the consumer side. Then also it is how quickly are you adopting technology?
Right.
Consumer has adopted it, so if businesses are not adopting it,
Yeah.
businesses are left behind because the consumer has moved on. Specifically, when I look at Indonesia, you'd see that the penetration of people shopping on TikTok, right, is massive. You'll see that there are so many people who are willing to go into buying on a live selling kind of, and it's a personalized engagement and everything comes into play. And I was in China recently, and understanding from there was like so different from the western part of the world. And I think Asia is making stories now.
Yeah.
Like
True,
people are
true.
looking more at Korea for beauty products than some of the other countries.
Yeah, true.
People are looking at China on tech side or how sales is done versus some of the other markets. Like I don't know. So how do we remain relevant? Not only that, okay, this is what is happening in the West, so we should do that. It's also to look at what's happening best in any part of the world. I kind of know, I read it somewhere that innovation is something which has already happened somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
You just need to find it out and copy it.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I mean, that's a very good way to put it.
yeah, that's more relevant now to understand that in China. So I'll give you an example. On live shopping in Indonesia, it's still one person who is talking and who's saying like, this is the product, engaging. In China, they do almost like a theater. So there are three people. One person is managing the back end of it, like chatting with the customers and everything. But then there are two people who are having an engagement, and like, I don't know, it's like almost like a show, right? And the person is putting in the questions, they are responding, and they work as a team of three, which I understand because of people cost and everything might be difficult in the western part of the world, but in Indonesia, I'm very sure that it will become a trend very soon.
It will come up, yeah.
Yeah.
Because manpower cost is not as high, right? So following those trends and adapting to it, I think that's also critical.
So you mentioned about embracing technology, right? And I would want to go into a bit more detail, right? When you meant about embracing technology, how can organizations do so? Where is the starting point?
So can I just come in first?
Sure.
Very tempted to comment on what Niraj said around having FGDs every month and basically keeping customer at the center of it. And honestly, it's such a delight to my ears to listen to that, because honestly so Miran, it's again, I think we said it a couple of minutes back, right? Fundamentals remain the same. Think about it, business is a very simple, like, I mean, at the core of it is about understanding customers, right? I think we would want to go into a bit more detail. We'll go there.
So when we say about understanding customers, right? How do you do that?
We'll do that. But the
From
first
a tech
point is,
pers-
is your intent even to understand customer?
Correct.
How many, honestly, business leaders, I have not come across many who would have an FGD every month, talking to customers, really understanding what's going on, right? Because what happens is, all of us have our own, gut feel about it, or we feel that we know about our customers. Oh, we are selling baby clothes. Okay, I've been a father or a mother myself, so I know what expecting mothers or new mothers would need and all of that. So we make assumptions, right? It's only when you are ready to really get into that zone where you say, okay, I know nothing. I will only learn from my customers. I will be humble enough to sit in front of them, talk to them, and truly understand what they need, is where you will start unraveling a lot of these insights, right?
Correct.
So the intent is the first, right? Technology is always an enabler. Technology never comes first, right? It is always the intent and the focus, which is the first thing, which is, as a business, are you truly customer centric? Now, once that is established, comes the technology part. How do you do it? How do you do this in a much more better way? How do you do it in a scalable way? Right? And you also asked that how, I think when you were asking that question to Niraj, that how do you actually become customer centric, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say that is where companies like Loyalytics would come in, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
our
yeah,
whole,
yeah.
that's
I
our
mean,
whole.
one needs to start with the intent, of course,
Correct.
and then that's where the rest of the things will
Correct.
fall into
Correct.
place.
Absolutely.
Correct. Right. So I mean, of course, data again becomes the starting point of many of these things, right?
Right.
Do you even have valid customer data, right? If you don't have, then you'll have to start thinking about, okay, how do I even start collecting my customer data? Um, and again, many times you've had this conversation that, okay, modern retail loyalty program is a good way to be able to start collecting customer data, right? Because you have some incentive that you can give out to the customers as well. But it of course does not stop there, right? That's the starting point. Now, what do you do with that? How do you truly understand customer needs and wants, utilizing that data, leveraging that data, right? Of course, there is a lot. So one part of understanding customer is sitting with them across a table like an FGD, but there are many other ways, right? You could do a very extensive surveys as well, right? Primary research as we call it, trying to understand what are the different personas. If you're talking about fashion, now
Yes.
fashion gets perceived by different customers differently, and every brand would have all sorts of customers, right? There would be some who are always looking for the latest trend, the latest style which is
Absolutely,
out
yeah.
there. There would be some for whom fashion is more functional. Like somebody like me, honestly, for me, it's more functional, right? I mean, I want to be comfortable. I am not really bothered about whether what I'm wearing was in style 5 years back. As long as I'm comfortable in it, I'm okay with it, right? But there are, I'm sure, others who are very particular about what they're wearing.
wear.
Is it
Absolutely.
in style? So their motivations are very different from somebody like me, right? Who views fashion as a very functional thing. Now, data would of course help us to be able to differentiate, right? Within all of your customer information that you have, you have a good analytics team, you have good systems. It'll help you differentiate it. It'll kind of carve out those segments for you, saying that, hey, these are the different personas that you have. Now, again, once those personas are established, a smart retailer, a smart merchandiser would then say, okay, now how do I define and design my merchandise and my assortment around these personas, right? That what do I give to this, what do I give to this segment, and so on and so forth, right? So again, lots of scope for data analytics, to intelligently take all of these decisions. Unfortunately, a lot of these decisions still in a lot many companies are driven more by gut feel,
Gut feeling.
experience,
Absolutely. Yeah.
rather than true science, as we
Yeah,
say, or
yeah,
true data,
yeah.
right? A merchandiser or a buyer would always say that, hey, I've been doing this for the last 5 years, 10 years. I know this category. I know this region. I have a feeling that this would sell. And it's not that they are they are wrong. A majority of the time they might be right as well. But then again, we are entering into an age where honestly you don't really need to really depend on any of your gut feel, right? I mean,
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
can actually be quantified, and everything actually can be
Absolutely.
predicted to a large level of accuracy.
Right.
So as much as possible, our advice always, whosoever we work with is to kind of put a data layer, put an intelligence layer, put an analytics layer on top of everything before we take the final decision.
And there's always a lot of nuance which is there, right?
Correct.
So as a regular person, like by our gut, we go with 1-0 approach, that this is right and this is wrong, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when we use data set for it, right, and when we look at it, then you're able to say, okay, in this environment the customer works differently versus in this environment they work differently. It can vary by time of year, seasonality. So say in Indonesia, like Eid is a big season, so the same consumer is willing to buy full price products before Eid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? And they have got THR and all the other payments, so they have access to funds, they are buying it. But when it is some other period, then they are looking for discounted products. So the consumer also behaves very differently between different
Yeah.
time frame. The consumer also behaves very differently between different brands.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe for certain, say for a footwear, they want to ensure that it's best comfort, nice, this, that. But for a casual T-shirt, when kids are playing, they are okay to go with a less branded or a less expensive option. So it varies by category, it
Yeah.
varies by brand. So there are so many
Yeah.
moving
Nuances to it.
dynamics.
Yeah.
So it is difficult if you don't analyze it properly using technology
Correct.
for anybody to make a fully informed decision, especially in a multi-brand or multi-category environment when because we generate thousands and thousands of data, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Yeah, and just to to add on, Miran, to your point earlier also, let's take the case of I remember as Niraj was talking, assortment. We used to do some analysis a few years back where we looked at attributes, right? And we looked at a product, let's say a fashion product, is nothing but a combination of attributes, right?
Yes.
So meaning what color, what material, full sleeves, half sleeves, right? Collared, without collar, and XYZ, many attributes, right? What price bucket,
Absolutely.
right? Now, when you start analyzing a product as a set of attributes, and then you start looking at how are these attributes actually interplaying with each other, and
Absolutely.
what is that combination of attributes that's kind of giving you the maximum hit, right, in terms of profitability, sales, and all of that,
Yeah.
right? And then you say, if I'm talking about t-shirts, maybe black color, round neck, this material, this
This
price
cut,
point, right?
this silhouette.
This thing is the sweet spot for me,
Yeah,
right? Historically, right? And of course, not just historically. Then look at your current circumstances as well. What is currently trending in the market? What is the latest signals that you are getting from TikTok and many other platforms where, again, depending upon what is your customer demography, you look at all of that and then you say, okay, now I think I can confidently, to Neeraj's point, and now I've done my analysis and I can confidently place an order that, I want to buy this, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that has to be done. That begs the question that, again, unfortunately, many a times retailers don't even have some of this basic attribute data.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
So you ask them, give us the attribute information, and they're like, okay, I don't have anything except size. So only thing I know is whatever large, medium,
yeah.
XL, all of that. So, but yes, there is it's very deep. There's a lot that can be done, but the starting point always is data, and also the intent for you as a business to truly understand your customers. You will only be able to do that through the use of technology, through the use of data analytics, and that's the only way for a sustainable business growth. Because the environment, I think, is going to remain the same. I mean, it's going to become more and more competitive, right? Newer brands will come,
Right.
consumer preferences will of course change, newer channels will emerge. For you to continuously win as a business, customer centricity has to be your topmost priority. I mean, it cannot be just another
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah.
It has to be truly be there, and leaders like Neeraj who are having an FGD every month, or focusing on customers, is what we need in terms of having that sharp focus on, this is what is the most important.
And interestingly that you talked about attributes, and I'm just reflecting on one of the discussions we were having. So we were discussing whether we should, and we were talking about girls, young girls, like from 6 years to 14 years, and what color should we have if we have to get t-shirts in two colors. And we said that we'll go with white and black, and then it was like, no, we should bring in pink. And then we got the teams to analyze the data, and it was interesting that in black color, people who are buying black are always buying short sleeves for girls,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But when it comes to pink, you have a different mix between short sleeves and full sleeves.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was
Interesting.
period on period,
Interesting.
period on
Yeah.
period, and you're like, okay, there's something definitely
Going on. Yeah.
behind the scenes, because it's not a coincidence that in black it is short sleeves, but it in pink, the mix of short and long sleeves is very different in
Very
black
interesting.
and pink.
Yeah.
So, and then you cannot just make it like if you are just looking at, if you're not looking at a big set of data, right?
yeah.
Only when you look at big set of data over a period of time, then you come across that, oh, okay, there's something to do with it. I don't know the logic behind it,
And
but
I'm-
I know that the data is that.
And I was about to say that, many a times data is not going to always tell you the entire story.
Yes.
For example, something like this, right? Which might be counterintuitive. You're still trying to wrap your head around, why is this happening? Okay, this is data has firmly established this is the case, but why? and you're not really able to put a logic behind it, right? And that is where you could combine that then with direct consumer research, right? You can talk to the customer. You can say, hey, this is what we are finding out. Does that make sense to you? Why do you feel this could happen? And and I would say 9 out of 10 times, if you talk to your customer, you will get the answer. And they might again tell you something which is very, very
Very insightful.
yeah, very insightful, and that can help your business. But I think again, it all starts with having the intent, having the focus, having the priority to truly understand your customers, who they are, and what is the best way for you as a business to be able to serve them. It is true for consumer facing businesses like retail, for example, fashion or any other. It is true for businesses like us, B2B businesses, software products, right? I mean, if we don't truly understand what our customers need, why would they use us? What is the value that we are bringing to them? We can also become irrelevant very soon.
True. Now, since we were talking about styles and different preferences, right? Styles keep evolving, and in today's days, styles are even it's called fast fashion, right? Every month there are new collections coming out, right? How do you keep up with that?
So the more I thought it is an art, now having worked in a fashion industry, it's a science.
Yeah.
So there are color themes which are like, which comes in globally, and you could see that, okay, this is the color of the year, or there are themes like that comes in. There's research that goes in.
Yeah.
There are trends that get set. So trends doesn't, it's not that it just happened by luck. There are also something which happens at the back end, like, which is through social media, through influencers, through various work that has been happening. And that's why you would see that various retail brands come up with similar product or similar color theme. When you're walking in quite a lot of fast fashion, you'll feel like, oh, I saw a similar piece coming in this brand, because everybody is looking at those set of data, looking at what is the trend that is happening on social media. I think a lot of it is happening there. I think the other thing is for anyone, to be able to quickly identify that trend and work on it. Because a trend, while we feel that it keeps changing very fast, but that's something that has happened somewhere.
But then how do you keep up with the inventory? Because again, you have to...
So one is that you work with experts. You get your teams access to those technologies, those tools which are there, which can help you. I know there's AI that we are leveraging to identify what is the what is the story, mood board behind it, and then you work on that mood board to come up with this. You always look at what are the next big events which are coming in. So like say if we know that World Cup football is coming in and maybe this team is playing better, then we know that there's a likelihood that something on this will go in. You always look at also at the same time reducing your supply chain time, right? So if you're able to reduce your supply chain, that your core is always there, right?
Correct.
Your basics are always there. It's only the additional 20-30% that you have to manage, right? That's more trendy. People are going to the store to find the trendy, but they also buy the core, like Ahmar mentioned, right? The black T-shirt, the whites, the comfort wear, those are always there.
They're never out of stock.
So you always do that, but at the same time, you take a punt on like, okay, this will work. You invest into it. You find sometimes you go super successful. Sometimes you do have a bad season. And then you the important thing is for you to analyze your data again, and then take action so that you are able to make up for it.
I think to be able to learn,
to learn
and learn as you're going through the season, right? I mean, not kind of taking a look at it once the season is over, but as you're going through the season, do you have the systems in place that can kind of give you that
that read.
That read that, okay, what's happening, right? Where am I going right? Am I going wrong? Which style is performing better? Which style is not performing better, right? And then take decisions if possible within the season itself, right? If not, at least be better prepared for the next one. So again, here is where technology, data, analytics come into the picture. You asked about how do you keep pace with inventory in such a fast. demand forecasting, right, is a science in itself, right? I mean, how do you make sure that you are accurately able to predict the demand for any particular style, SKU, and it's been done. I mean, it's to be honest, is I think new, right? Best retailers in the world, some of these fast fashion players are already doing it, and they're doing it really, really well, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah. So who from your experience, right? Who would stand out as a benchmark brand from a global or a local perspective, considering all of these things?
In terms of
In terms of how they are understanding consumer behavior, how they're staying relevant, doing things in more of a smarter way using tech, and thriving in this market basically.
so I think it's a combination, right? There are various things that come into play. Like say if you look at a brand like Adidas more recently, right? They were able to get ahead of competition and identify what's next, and they also kind of help build it.
How much role did Nike play in that is
Yeah,
another
kind of,
story.
so again, you have to build it up, right? So how do you build it up? Kind of create a hype around it, right?
Yeah.
So that's always there in the fashion world. Kind of, if you look at it, and there are brands which stand out for particular things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like say Zara would stand out for something which is very different from what a Uniqlo stands for
Yeah.
versus what a H&M does, and sometimes it's also how do you create a full story around it.
True.
Yeah.
I think fashion, very valid point. I think fashion is a lot about story.
Story.
And that is where I think fashion differs from.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about connecting with emotions, right?
So story
That's
is very
the story.
important, right? It's unlike a, let's say, hypermarket grocery retailer.
Oh, yeah, it's very
where,
different.
Where story
Yeah.
does not really play that much of a role.
Yeah.
But I think fashion is all about story, right? What is your essence, right? What are you talking about? Uniqlo, for example, is a brand that personally I love. It's a pity it's not there in Middle East yet, like in Dubai, but great brand. But very minimal, styles, solid colors, but super comfortable. But that's the story that that they have. That comfort is really the
Absolutely.
king,
Yeah.
right? So
And
so,
same goes across. So
Correct.
so we are at Matahari. We are selling. They are Lamborghini, right? So I'm sure you'd have gone through those TikTok videos and everything talking about Lamborghini strollers, which
Yeah,
are
yeah.
like some $5,000 price, kind of, and we got 5 into Indonesia out of total 100 in the world, and 4 were sold out, booked
Wow.
within 1 week. So kind of it's a hype that gets created.
Yeah.
People like it, and there's a different set of customers for it, right?
Yeah,
So how do you channel it to those customers? That yes, that this is the profile of customer, they are lacking it, and for them it is they love it. Like they have been waiting for it.
Yeah,
But at the same time, there would be customers who are looking for easy to carry regular stroller, and there may be someone who is looking at a low cost stroller. So there are different customers. How do you cater and meet the need of each category of customers?
Right. True. So now we so far we have been discussing multiple things, starting from what should be the pricing like, what does the merchandising strategy look like. Now, keeping behind everything, now of course you have your product you need to sell, right? And you have been discussing and you have been talking about this live commerce, TikTok, and all of this, right? Lot of some of these brands are legacy brands who have been selling offline. They're slowly getting into e-commerce, and e-commerce probably would be what, in a single digit number penetration from that
It
perspective.
depends on who you are. For
Yeah.
us, it is double digit already.
Yeah. So from that perspective, right? Considering all of this channel, how do you build the ecosystem around it that is that you are present in omni-channel? I mean, when you are present in offline, you are present in online, TikTok, live commerce, all of that. How do you manage all of this? Isn't it chaotic?
No, actually, you need to drive your people towards thinking it as one business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing that I feel for my team is they don't feel that e-commerce is taking my business away. They feel that e-commerce is helping them sell more.
Great.
We do fulfill, we are amongst very limited retailers in the country who do fulfill from store for marketplace orders. Now, as a starting point, when I'm putting up a incentive scheme for the staff in the store. We give them incentive even for when they are fulfilling e-commerce orders, so that they feel that they are part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to excite them and bring them together.
Yeah.
At the same time, we are also seeing customer walking into a store and the staff having that confidence that, okay, oh, you want this particular pair of shoe, I don't have it in your size, but wait. And then they look at the system and say, I have got this shoe in this store. Can I take your order and deliver it to your house?
Yeah.
Which is effectively taking an order in store and not losing that
Yeah,
sale.
yeah.
So I think it's building the team together to think as one business rather than saying that, oh, e-commerce is taking my business. So it's not online versus offline.
Offline, yeah.
It is
bringing
online and
everything
offline.
together. Yeah.
We do have we do sell on TikTok through official TikTok store, but we also have our staffs in the store who are actually, when customer is not there, then they are going on the store Instagram or TikTok account, and they are selling products from there. And customers are buying it. Kind of, customers look at it. They know it's from official, like it's not an official store of the brand, but they know that the staff is doing it from the store,
Yeah.
and they trust it and they shop.
Yeah.
And with the ecosystem that we have in the country with Gojek, Grab, instant deliveries and everything, with Curious, customer is able to directly transfer the amount, and then the Gojek guy comes in 10 minutes and the product is sent to their home.
Yeah.
So it's so convenient.
Yeah.
We just need to enable everything comes in together, and that needs to be supported with technology.
Right. So since you mentioned technology, and this is something we often hear talking to people. Now there are multiple parts, right? Offline, you get transaction data. You are doing the transactions very straightforward. Now you have TikTok coming in place. You have your marketplaces. How do you bring all of this data together? Number one. Second is there are of course limitations in data, and often we hear that marketplaces do not share PII data per se. They'll share what customers are buying, what are their preferences, but they will not essentially share the customer information, right? So how do, in this kind of a environment, right? How, when we say that bringing all the data together, using science behind it, how do you do that?
Yeah. So one thing, as Niraj said, I think it's easier it's easier now to be able to do all of that than probably it was 10 years back. The ecosystem in and around e-commerce delivery, e-commerce fulfillment, all of that is a lot easier now. As he's saying, in a country like Indonesia, or if I take, for example, India example as well, it's become so easy, right? I mean, you can place an order. Now in fact, back home in India, people are talking about Q-commerce and fashion, and people are kind of getting cars delivered, by the way, in 10 minutes through Zeptos and all of that, right? So I think the supporting ecosystem is a lot more, I would say, evolved, which is making it a lot easier. Number one. To your question, Miran, of being able to bring all of this together, yes, of course, that's like a given. You have to be able to. So when we talk about true customer understanding, and as again Niraj very rightly pointed out, it's not 2 or 3 different channels. It's ultimately one business, and it is just different channels for the customer, which is again bases their preferences and their conveniences, right? So I might be the same shopper, but today it's raining. I don't really feel like going out, so I'll just go to your online store and I'll place an order. But tomorrow I really want to go to the mall. I want to watch a movie as well, and therefore I will go to the mall and I'll buy from there. I'm the same guy. For businesses, of course, it's very important to be able to tie the two, right? To be able to know that, okay, he or she is the same customer who was there on my e-commerce site, put something in the basket, maybe did not buy, came to the store, made a purchase, and that is the point where the abandoned cart could actually now be made into a proper sale, right? But all of that again, at the back end involves technology, right? Having systems that are connected to each other, systems that are talking to each other. The second part of what you said, right? Marketplaces and customer data there, and them not sharing PII information and all of that is a part of the puzzle, I would say, which is still sort of unsolved, right? But again, I would say innovative businesses are kind of trying to get around that as well. For example, now on Shopify and some of the other on Shopee and some of the other marketplaces, you can actually have people, and I think Niraj, just the other day, I think you were mentioning that you guys now have your loyalty points
Want to
enabled
enable, yeah.
on Shopee and other marketplaces, right? Which would enable them to be able to identify customers, right? So I think, yeah, you'll have to somehow figure out a way to be able to do that. But yes, full data from marketplaces, of course, because at the end of the day, it's their platform.
Yeah.
So there are reasons why they are not very willing to share that data with the brands and the retailers. But even if that's not there, that is not stopping any business to be able to stitch that 360 customer view. And that is very, very important, right? For you to be able to, again, seamlessly service the customer, right? Wherever they are, at store, on TikTok, on your e-commerce site, wherever.
Right.
And just to add, like I don't know, while you might not be able to get an individual customer level data from a marketplace,
Yeah.
but when you aggregate it at a customer, like I don't know, at 1,000 transactions which were done yesterday, then you know that okay, out of those 1,000 transactions, this is what customer is buying,
Correct.
this and this product the customer is buying together. So you can analyze a lot of that,
Yeah.
and when you're displaying those products in marketplace, you can bring it up all together. So you can still leverage a lot of your data which is there to do it. The second piece is also how you partner with marketplace. Don't see them as your competitor.
True.
See them as your partner.
True.
Right, and when you work with
Another
them, they
channel.
understand, right?
Yeah.
See them as another channel,
Yeah.
and absolutely, kind of, no, like your banking partners, they are your front end partners. So see them as partners.
Absolutely. Now, since we touched upon loyalty, right? Just Ahmar, you mentioned that the customer loyalty is important in fashion retail, any retail per se. Customer loyalty is important, right? But customer loyalty, people often think it's discounts. Customer loyalty is giving discounts. I give points. That's all about it, right? But how is it different? I think it's more than that. What do you think, Niraj? What do you think, Ahmar, on this?
So, it might sound again a bit counterintuitive, but we say loyalty is a myth, and I think it's true. In today's world, there is no such thing called loyalty as such, right? I'd say between brands and customers, right? It's all about convenience. It's all about our brands. You as a brand, are you really able to fulfill my needs? What I need, right? Are you able to give me, let's say, what I want at a price point that I'm comfortable at? In a way which is very, very easy for me, convenient. I don't really have to spend a lot of energy or effort on that. And if you're able to do that, I am loyal to you. And it's ultimately experiences that you give me as a brand that I as a customer would remember. You rightly said it's not about discounts, it's not about points for sure. We always say that loyalty programs do not make your customers loyal. Although our name is Loyalytics, and we are of course one of the biggest proponents of customer centricity, customer loyalty. But that is where I think traditionally loyalty has been looked at in a slightly different way, which is all about points and discounts and all of that, which is a slippery slope, right? As a retailer, as a business, as a brand, you cannot afford to do that, right? Because if your only moat to be able to bring a customer to your store is a 5% or a 10% discount, for how long will that continue, right? So that's not possible. The essence of loyalty is experience. The essence of loyalty is being able to deliver or give something to the customer in a way that they always remember. And the I would say the bedrock or the foundation of that, of course, is data, right? So going back again, and maybe people who are listening might feel that we're kind of talking about the same point, but it is the universal truth, right? Which is, try and understand your customers. Loyalty program is a good way for you to be able to collect customer data and then leverage that data to be able to have a really, really sharp understanding and insight about your customers. And once you do that, that is where you use those insights to tailor experiences, personalized experiences for them. And once you do that in a scalable way over a period of time, is when you will have customers who are loyal to you, right? Customers who feel that, okay, every time I go to this particular store or every time I shop from this brand, the experience is really great. They seem to know my style. They seem to know who I am, right? And they go the extra way to be able to make my life easy, right? Small things, simple things also
do matter.
matter. I mean, you look at small towns, right? All of us, I'm sure have grown up in small towns where you go to a shop and the shopkeeper would know you by name, you would know your father by name, and they would say, just sit down and they'll offer you tea and whatever, right? And the person who's showing you stuff also knows exactly what kind of stuff would you like. So he's not going to waste time, right? He knows this is the three designs that you love, and most often than not you would pick one of the three. So that's personalization there, right? Of course, challenges doing the same thing at scale. Right? When you have millions and millions of customers, how do you do that, right? If you're only catering to 100, you might do it, and that is where, of course, we are at a point, honestly, where it's very possible, right? Brands are already doing it, personalizing their offering, personalizing every aspect of their business, keeping the customers in mind, and that is I would say that's the secret sauce, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Great. So, we are talking about loyalty. We are talking about customer engagement. Yes, lot of things, the technology, data matters, and all of that. All of the nuances that you talked about, right? But again, coming back to the same point, technology, right? It is expensive. It is overwhelming for certain retailers. People are a bit hesitant, again, considering the economic scenarios and everything, spending additional amount of money on this, right? So, Neeraj, from a leading a fashion brand, right? What is your take in this? How do you balance that?
So the way you look at it is it an investment or a expense, right? If you're building up your customer data and you are leveraging it to drive customer into your stores and do more business, to me it's a marketing investment.
Yeah.
Right? It's like either I'm doing a above the line activity, which is at times a spray and pray that I expect that a customer will look at it and like it and come to my store.
Yeah.
Right? Versus me doing a targeted, precise that, okay, these are the types of customers who like this, they shopped this in the past, so I'm sending them a offer or I'm sending them a product imagery of this product. Or say in a mother care environment, we know when a child is born, right? Because the customer is shopping with us, we know that they bought the maternity kit, they bought newborn products, and after 1 year we know that, okay, it's kid's birthday, or in the life journey of the kids they need to buy these toys which help them gain these skill sets, like this basic things, and we target them with that. Then the customer is like, okay, the company understands me.
Correct.
And they're reaching out to us with the right piece. Now we need to have a balance between the two.
I'll just give you an example. I'm sorry to, because wonderful example. My daughter is now 11 years old. 11 years back when she was born, of course, we bought a stroller for her. I won't name the brand, back home in India. We bought the stroller, and then for almost a year, post that purchase, almost every month I used to get a message, from the same brand, trying to sell me a stroller. Now I have only one kid. Okay, maximum I might have two. But what is the point of sending me throughout the year 12 different messages, offers, discounts? Why would I need if I have one kid? Why would I need two strollers, right? So that is where brands need to, to his point, that you need to understand, you need to use data, you need to leverage data to be able to understand, okay, what are you even sending someone, right? And that is a bad experience. Beyond a point, I mean, even if I were to have a second kid, I would probably never go to that brand, because I don't want to be again hounded 1 year later with another stroller, right? So that is where it's important to utilize data, and then
and there are so many examples. Like we know that, say, Invilio, which is our multi-brand footwear brand, so we sell Adidas, Nike, Puma, we sell On Running. So we know that a kid has bought a football jersey, a club jersey from any of the clubs, and then we know that, okay, this is the kid who likes this club. they're very loyal, or this is the kid who plays football, and then we'll send them a ad for a football shoe, kind of, and it's more likely that they like it and they come.
Exactly.
Rather than sending them the same jersey of the same football club again and again, right? Kind of,
And it's a long time.
It's a long time.
It's a continuous activity.
Yes.
Because customer profile, their personas don't get built in a day.
Yeah.
If you're a brand, let's say you're a retailer and you're truly trying to understand, let's say Miran, then you won't be able to understand it in a single day or through a single purchase. But as Niraj is saying, over a period of time, you continue to add that intelligence, right? And you will get to a point where, you would know about each individual customer really, really well. And that is always the endeavor, right? As we always say, segment of one.
Segment of
right? Don't treat customers as belonging to one segment where there are 100,000 customers in the same segment. Try and treat every customer as a unique, distinct, human being with distinct needs and preferences, and that is what actually it is, right?
It is. Yeah.
Even two people, like I'm sure, right? The three of us sitting here, we would have very different fashion. How do I say, needs and whatever requirements, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that is what is needed. To your point again, Miran, on technology is expensive, and in this environment, how do retailers or business leaders like, let's say Niraj, would make this decision of whether to go for this or not? As a simple answer for that is ROI, right? Which is, again, let's say for companies like us, we need to be very clear of what is it that the business is going to gain, right? I mean, tomorrow, I'm just giving an example. Let's say I go to Niraj and I say, hey Niraj, I have this wonderful product around customer engagement, and why don't you try it? I can stop my story there, or I can go on and say that, by the way, this is what you could expect to gain,
Yes, absolutely.
over a period of time,
Right.
and this is the cost, and this is what you could expect to gain. So this is the incremental, and therefore this is the ROI. So you got to make it easy, right, for the business, for them to be able to make that decision. So as long as you're very clear, I think, in terms of ROI, and you are able to convince, why would, as Neeraj said, right, why would businesses not do it? Because
There's a return. There's a return that we see. And to me, honestly, when I look at a more of a ATL piece, I'm not sure whether how many eyebrows am I getting, or how much is it generating. If it is a if it is a big poster, like on the highway, I don't know it.
Billboard.
But at least on digital, on loyalty, at least I can exactly measure as to what happened, what was the impact of it. We sent 1 million emails. How many people opened it? How many of them actually
Came back
and shopped? And we do a quote unquote a taste and learn, saying that if the email subject is this versus this, how does it behave? And it's all science.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is why you see, right, a lot of advertising dollars getting now kind of, moved to online channels, right?
Right.
If I am a brand and I want to spend $100, I would rather spend it, on online, where, to his point, measurement is a lot better, right? I would be able to kind of get to that ROI, that for this much amount spent, what did I really get back? I mean, of course, there are, when you talk about data science, there are methods like marketing mix modeling, which have been in existence for a very long time, where you are actually also able to, in a way, measure your ATL activities, right? Your TV ads, your billboards, and all of that. But I mean, of course, online is a different ballgame. It's very, very
precise.
That's the word. It's very precise. You would be able to say that, okay, this customer, this decision was influenced by this ad that I showed. So
Yeah. Interesting discussion. A lot of insights, a lot of information on how things are working. But before we wrap, I have a quick lightning round where you just need to
rapid fire.
Yeah, rapid fire or whatever. Just one line answers. Not too much details. So starting, one fashion trend about to explore in Indonesia.
Okay, I'm just thinking out. Like, should I talk about kids or adults? I think. Okay, now I have to think about it. I think clearly people are willing to go with different brands. So it's not about like I'm going with a premium brand only or I'm going with a middle brand only. I think customers are willing to try various brands. So it's less and less of that I wear only
Yeah, a particular brand.
a particular brand. I think people are now willing to try various brands. Trial, they are more open, much more open.
Okay. One thing most retailers are getting wrong about today's customers.
That customer thinks it's only online or it's only offline. I think customer is omni. The same customer shops on Shopee, but the same customer also visits our stores.
Yeah, yeah, and also that they know everything about the customer that's there to be known. So I think you need to be humble and you need to really, sit down and truly understand what the customers are saying.
If you could steal one idea from a global brand, what would it be?
I think it's very simple. Moving the Zara way, wherein my supply chain is so fast that I can react to change in trends and everything at a very quick pace of time.
A retail habit or strategy that needs to die in 2025.
Sorry,
needs to
a
A retail habit or strategy that needs to die in 2025.
I think what he said was really good. Looking at Omni-Channel as again two different channels and all. I think it's time that we look at it as one business. And most importantly, I think within the team. See, because honestly, slightly long answer, but you can have any strategy in the world. At the end of the day, I think execution and retail is all about detail, as they say, right? Retail is all about execution. So on the ground, execution needs to be there. And I think to a great point that Niraj made earlier, wherein make sure that the team also don't kind of see
it as
each
competing.
other as competition, right? I mean, you're part of the same team. You're just making it easier for the consumer to sell. So start viewing, business as one. Omnichannel would just mean, being able to be present at every possible opportunity or channel where the customer or consumer is. That's what it is. But it is the same business and needs to be looked at in that way. It's high time.
Okay. What excites you most about the future of fashion retail in Indonesia? Let's say in next 5 years.
I think it's to me, right? To me, being able to meet so many customers and to be able to understand how they are changing and being able to get our people to be part of that change and work with them.
Yeah. To me, coming, let's say, from my background, I would say how AI is going to change, things, particularly in fashion retail. Just the other day, I think somebody said, how is customer engagement going to change, or what customer engagement is going to look like in 2050? And I said 2050 there will no longer be customer engagement, there'll be agent engagement, right? So I think very soon we'll probably enter an era where customers are not even going to go and shop, right? Agents on their behalf are going to go and shop from websites and whatnot, right? So then how do you bring agent centricity into your mix, right, as a business? So I think that's very interesting. Where it actually goes, what actually happens is, of course, anybody's guess, but I think very, very exciting times ahead.
Great, amazing. So yeah, I think that's the end of it. It was an amazing discussion, a lot of insights, a lot of industry details that we got to know. And I hope you had a great time, here as well.
Thank you, Miran. I think great job. Thank you so much. You seem to be becoming a pro at it now. And thank you, Niraj. As I said in the beginning, always a pleasure talking to you. And thank you so much for giving us your time. Very, very valid points you made. And, we look forward to hopefully having you again.
Thank you for having me, and it's pleasure. Absolutely pleasure. Learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for staying this long into this conversation. Amazing insights shared by two industry leaders in this space. If you like this episode, do hit up a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your team members, your friends. I'm Miran, signing off from today's episode of Retail Reloaded. Looking forward to more such future episodes with you. Thank you.